Welcome to Love by Jane, your home for lifestyle, wellness and personal development. Starting my channel with the Inspired Chat series. Let's feel inspired together, hope you enjoy, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe.
So I'm excited today to welcome Lauren Robbins. She's a boundaries and identity coach whose mission is to support you from feeling lost, stagnant and unfulfilled to finding freedom, clarity on who you are, what you want, and gives you the confidence to go out there and get it, which I absolutely love this, Lauren. So thank you for being here today with us. That's great.
Thank you for having me.
I'd love to start really by you telling us all a little bit about yourself, if that's okay.
So as you just said, I'm a boundaries and identity coach. So really looking into what people really want to do and then focusing on building that and mostly the confidence. I'm also a yoga teacher as well, and that's partly how I came onto this journey as well. So lots of different areas of expertise that I try and use in all of my coaching.
That's great. And I can see how yoga would help you with balancing your body and mind and then getting into boundaries and taking that space and time out for yourself.
Oh, exactly. And that's actually how I got into wanting to be a coach as well. I was doing my yoga teacher training. I had a niggle that I had to go and do my yoga teacher training. And I was doing that. And one of the swamis, so one of the masters was like, remember, the people that come to your class, they're going to come to you and they're going to be stressed and they're going to have back problems. You can't help with their stress, and you're not a doctor and you can't help with their back problems. And I was like, I could help with their stress. I want to help with their stress. And it kind of planted that seed there, which is how I came into coaching.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What inspired you to start as a boundaries and identity coach?
Yeah, it was that. So it was that first thing. And I was like, surely, I love having the conversations in yoga classes, in those areas, in all of my roles previous to this. I've always looked to improve. I've always looked to upskill, change things, often to my own detriment because I've made myself redundant in a number of roles. But I like changing things. I've always looked for improvement. So that's where I've always looked for. And I didn't ever know that you could be a coach. I did want to be a counsellor at one point at school. I studied psychology at A levels. So it was always kind of there, but I never thought it was a career option for me. So it wasn't until I'd done my yoga teacher training, then I was thinking about building up my yoga teacher training business and focusing on that. And that's when I thought about coaching as well. I had coaching myself and I was like, okay, this could work as well. And I moved into it that way. It was actually a conversation, maybe an argument with my mum that made me go down the boundaries route.
Oh.
I was trying to set a boundary and I was doing it badly at the time. And she was like, you're obsessed with boundaries. And I was like, oh, okay, this could work. And here I am.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's interesting how, like you say, with yoga teaching as well, that you're actually coaching people in a way. And it's not really a career that many people think of, but it's actually really important to invest in ourselves and have someone to coach us. It's like anything in life, we get PTs if we want to try and get fit. It's just another aspect of someone coaching you on a different aspect in your life.
Exactly that. It's just all those other aspects that we see as a normal or when we're expected to do our more physical body, whereas I think the mind's more important in a way.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. And I think it's such a big topic at the moment because it's so difficult to set time aside for ourselves, and boundaries is a big issue, especially with family members or friends. When it's a personal relationship, it's so difficult to set that boundary with someone. So for anyone listening who may be struggling with boundaries, what's the best self-care advice you would give them to start?
I'd say that boundaries are self-care. I know that the boundaries are the highest form of self-care there is because you are looking after yourself. So think about that first and know that once you have them in place, it will help hugely. Not to say that it's not really tricky though. So dealing with the guilt setting boundaries won't ever go. You're always going to set a boundary. You're always going to feel a little bit guilty. So really getting to know yourself and knowing what works for you. So knowing if a walk in nature helps clear your head, if you need to send a text and throw your phone across the room and forget about it for the rest of the day, if you need to have a quick offload to a friend, have a bath, have your favorite hot drink, figure out what soothes you best and how you can look after yourself afterwards so that you can continue to do that moving forward.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it also goes into being more curious about your own life rather than about what everyone else is thinking. So the guilt comes from the fact of what we think the other person's going to feel like. If we spent that time, all that time we spend worrying about what the other person's doing and worrying about that guilt on how we can make ourselves feel better, we'd waste a lot less time.
Yeah, that's very true. Do a lot of that when you're sitting there and worrying about how to reply to someone, or feeling bad because you haven't turned up to something, and taking that, when if you need to take time for yourself, but feeling guilty, like you say, that pressure of letting someone else down.
Exactly. I mean, it's easier said than done, but we all know in reality, if you think about it, you spend way more time thinking about yourself than you think about other people. So they're doing the exact same thing. They're not as bothered about you as you probably think they are.
Yeah, that's very true.
I want to swallow that, but we're all self-indulgent, aren't we? So
it's true. Yeah, it is true. You do end up getting a bit self-obsessed with things, and then that's when you start, like you say, doubting yourself, and then all these other thoughts come in, and then you end up getting stressed and anxious about things that you don't need to be stressing and get anxious about, that can maybe affect your whole day.
exactly. And I think what we get so caught up in is setting boundaries with people that they don't actually matter with. Often when we're scared about a boundary and we're going to set it and it's going to affect a relationship, if it really affects the relationship was not on healthy grounds beforehand. It's not because of the boundary, that's just been a catalyst to it. So in a way, it's like you get out of the way sooner rather than later. You don't have to drag out wasting energy on a relationship that isn't serving you properly and isn't built healthily.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true indeed. And what's the best way that someone can start putting boundaries in place, would you say?
Start with yourself. Always start with yourself. If you cannot set a boundary with yourself, you're not going to be able to set one with anyone else. By that, I mean getting a full 8 hours sleep if you need 8 hours sleep, not spending loads of time on social media if that's not what you want to do, keeping any promises to yourself, whether that's going to be drinking water, eating healthily, getting out on a walk, whatever those things are that you know make you feel good. All of these different things. I mean, you can start really small and put limits on your phone. Like I have a really strong boundary that I don't have my phone in my bedroom at all now, but that didn't happen overnight. First of all, I set a do not disturb on my phone from 9 p.m. till 8 a.m. And guess what? No one calls me after 9 p.m. anymore. To start with, people did, but no one does anymore because they know they can't get through to me. So it's hard to start with, but you start with yourself and start small, like super small. So something that's not that important. So like setting a do not disturb on your phone. It's not the end of the world if you don't do that, and allow yourself to do it really bloody messily. Allow yourself to do it whether you're sweating, whether you are throwing your phone across the room, whether you need someone to hold your hand while you're doing it. Allow yourself to do it messily, but just start small, start messy, and start with yourself.
That's really great tips there. Thanks, Lauren. That's brilliant. Especially with the phone, like you say, that's a brilliant place to start because we spend hours on our phone. So great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I never think that that's one of a boundary for me, but then I say it just because of course it is. So there's also really small boundaries that you've probably already got in place, like getting people to take their shoes off when they come in your house. Yeah. Think about the ones you already have in place, and then it will help give you a bit more confidence to be able to set some more.
Yeah, that's true. I've not thought about that before, but yeah, like you say, that's just a habit that you can put into other areas. So yeah, that's brilliant. I love it. Are there any sort of boundaries or empowerment coaches that have inspired you over the time that, you know, has made you want to take this next leap?
There's one therapist called Nedra Tawwab. She's got some brilliant content on Instagram, a great book on boundaries as well. But yeah, she gives so much good, like free, valuable content on Instagram, digs in to like the trauma and the childhood things, where it's come from as well, patterns of it. It's just she's brilliant, and she's got bloody great hair. So
oh wow. Amazing. I'll have to look her up.
But it's like great big afro, and it's got like
oh wow.
Well, at one point it had like a right angle out of it. It was great.
Oh, beautiful. Stunning. It's so difficult with boundaries because, like you say, it's it's family members and things that are maybe more the issue that I think that we have around things. And so like if you've set boundaries and you've thought about it and you started with yourself, say, and then you want to take that leap next of starting it with other people more. So how can we maintain the boundaries that we set, especially when it comes to like our friends, our family, or maybe even work colleagues? Because obviously in a work environment, that's another different aspect that's really difficult to say you've set a boundary and you don't want to be emailed maybe out of work at home, and then they're thinking that's acceptable. So how do you go about that?
You've got to be really consistent, and you've got to know that people aren't probably going to get it the first time you tell them. We've got two different types. When we're setting boundaries, you've either got people that you're setting a boundary with for the first time. So maybe your boss who always sends emails and you've always replied. So when you say to them, I don't want you to do that anymore, that's the first time you set a boundary with them. You're going to have to repeat it. It's a learning behavior. It's the same as if you think about a baby trying to walk, it has to keep standing up and falling over before they get the hang of it. So you're going to have to repeat it. So being confident in your boundary and saying it out loud and holding up your end. So if you say, I'm not going to reply to any emails after 5 o'clock, don't reply to any emails after 5 o'clock. Because if you do, they're going to see, oh, okay, so I only need to do it 3 times, and then they're going to reply. Everyone's looking to get their way, not out of malice, not because they don't respect you, but because that's what their priority is. And we've got different priorities. So you've got to make it easier for yourself. With that example with work emails, take your work emails off your phone. How can you make it even easier for yourself? And only have it on your laptop, and make sure you've got a timer that goes off at 5 o'clock and it shuts it down. Maybe you set your hours in your work calendar. Make it really clear, but you've got to be clear with the people that you're setting them with. So what you are going to do and what you expect. First of all, I'd always set the boundary. What do you expect? Do not set a consequence until that's been broken a few times, unless it's someone who's a repeat offender, so someone that you've had to set a boundary with before and still ignores you. So the boss is calling you at the weekend, then you can be like, look, I'm going to block your number because you don't need my personal number. Then you set a consequence if it's a repeat. People often think, okay, I'm setting a boundary, what do I do when they break it? They're already thinking, oh, someone's going to break it, they're not going to listen to me. So if we think like that, we're going to let that behavior happen because we're not going to stand in our own way. So be clear to start with, and be really consistent. Be consistent with yourself, be consistent with the other people as well, and be kind. We don't have to be horrible when we're setting boundaries. If you set them and make it about the other people, which boundaries are not about, boundaries are all about ourselves, our limits. They're not about changing other people's behavior. That's when we can stick to them. If we're setting boundaries because we want other people to change, they're going to fail. You cannot change other people, and if you expect to change other people, they are going to fail miserably.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's very true, actually. And it's like you have to really know yourself well. It's like, this is obviously where the identity part comes in with yourself, because obviously you need that confidence to put those boundaries in place and to stick to them, because it's so easy, like you say, if you want to change a habit, you've got to try and, like you say, start small and then build up, and then but stick to it, because otherwise people will just think, I maybe just knock them that little bit further. They test your boundaries, don't they? So you really need to know yourself, like what you want to put up with yourself or not put up with. Have the confidence then to stick and believe in yourself, and then you can have them healthy boundaries in place that are helpful to yourself, like you say, not to change someone else, but for your benefit, so that you can improve your life, whether it's to feel happier or whether it's to make more use of your time, so you're not, like you say, on call for a boss or something like that. So yeah, it's really interesting how closely linked they are with your identity and confidence, to be able to set those boundaries and what's right for yourself.
Exactly. It's about getting really clear on like what your desires are and your intentions, and also things that you are willing to negotiate on. What are things that aren't deal breakers? But when we don't know the purpose of setting the boundary, that's when it goes wrong. Like for me, when I was trying to set it with my mum at Christmas, I knew deep down what the purpose was, but I wasn't quite clear and I wasn't expressing it properly. So it wasn't coming out right. So then things get lost in translation. And what happens is people get defensive because they want an answer. You can't give a direct answer because you don't know yourself. And then people get defensive, which is understandable. So knowing before you set the boundary why you're doing it. Go back with the boss. I'm setting it because I want to spend more time with my family. I'm setting it because we're not getting paid overtime. Whatever it may be, whatever your reason is, it's valid, because else it wouldn't be important to you. But know that. But you don't always have to give the reason first, like when you're setting that boundary.
Yeah, that's really helpful advice. Thank you very much for that. It's definitely something that we can all start learning from and thinking about how we can put that in place to improve our own lives.
Yeah.
What top tips would you say then you would give us for leading a better and healthier relationship with ourselves, and especially how we start needing to learn to know ourselves a bit better, and how we can obviously start small with boundaries? So how do we do that?
So I think, following on from what we're just saying, knowing yourself really clearly. So I do this regularly, actually. I do different personality tests. I look at astrology things. I look at human design. All of these different things, quizzes, and I pick out the things that resonate with me and that I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. Or, oh, I like the sound of that, because then you get to know what you like and what you don't like without the pressure of sitting there and going, God, I don't know who I am. Don't know what I'm interested in. Because if someone asks you that, you sit there and go, don't know, nothing. And think about what you do on like a weekly basis. Like keep a little checklist of what makes you feel happy, when you feel joy. Like really get to know your values, your desires, who you are. So many different ways to do it. Go and try new hobbies as well, but really understanding who you are. For some people, they might like to meditate. Other people might hate meditating, but might like journaling. And it doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's wrong. With this whole self-development like world, there's often this huge checklist of things we have to do. We don't have to do any of them. You've just got to know what feels right for you. So really learning to trust in yourself as well. I'd also say affirmations and gratitude daily. It helps build that trust in yourself. It helps build up your self-worth, your self-esteem. And when we're focusing on gratitude, we're focusing on those good things. So easy to get stuck in the crappiness of the world, especially at the moment, or even your day, and then get stuck into victim mindset. And then we just create more of the bad stuff. So really focusing on the good things, knowing what we like and doing more of those, creating more time for it, making sure that you're putting yourself first, whether that's I literally book time in my calendar. I book my time first, then I book time with my friends, family, my partner, and then everything else falls in place. So you've got to know what your priorities are. You don't want yourself, especially, to be getting the end bits of your energies, the leftovers. Make time and carve time out for yourself. One thing I've done for over a year is booking a self-care day for myself, one day every month. I plan to do nothing. I plan nothing. I'm such a planner. I'm so masculine energy. So I plan nothing in. And then when the day comes, if I want to see someone, I go and see someone. If I don't, generally, I just have a bath, read a book, and eat some nice food and have a very chilled one, but know what works for you. And the last thing I'd say is know your triggers. If something bothers you, start writing it down, start figuring out why it bothers you. You're not going to know it straight away. If you sit and something's like, no, that doesn't sit right with me, that's annoying, write it down, come back to it and figure out why you're annoyed by that. The more you understand your triggers, the more you can learn about yourself, and then you can learn about where you need boundaries in place as well. If someone's triggering you and it's something that's a trauma that needs to be healed, then you can work on that. If it's something that's unacceptable behavior for you, then you can work on putting boundary in place. So looking at them, triggers are great places. If they get such a bad rap for being a bad thing, but it's such a great tool to be able to know and learn more about ourselves.
Yeah, that's very true. Some really helpful tips there. And I love the idea of the self-care day. That is a brilliant idea. It's something that I've never really thought of before. But yeah, that really actually switching off, and then you get to know yourself a bit more. I love that.
It doesn't even have to be like the traditional, like have a bath, have a face mask. I love doing that anyway, but it can be whatever you like. I wrote out like a self-care menu for myself. So like, what would like physical things be? What would emotional things be, what are creative things. So then I'm like, I can look at it and be like, that's what I need today. And then it's always without technology, to be fair, away from technology, but figure out what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, we can learn so much from our triggers, and maybe people could start maybe journaling on that. Like you say, if there's something shows up, and then that gives them a way of maybe learning a bit more about themselves, and then think about the boundaries they can put in place because of a trigger. So yeah, I love that too. That's brilliant.
Exactly. I've recently got a client to start keeping a trigger diary. So writing down what the trigger is, writing down how it made them feel in that moment, writing down how they did respond then, normally emotionally charged if you're just beginning to work on your triggers, and then how you would love to be able to respond like in a perfect world. So then you can figure out how you can get to that point and how you'll see the progress through it as well. So you can look back week on week, month on month, and be like, oh, how I handled that didn't trigger me anymore because I've dealt with it.
Yeah, and it gets so overwhelming, like you say, with the personal development side of things, and there's so many books out there and so many different ways of doing things. And yeah, I mean, affirmations are a brilliant one. I found that really helpful for myself and being more grateful as well. But yeah, it's definitely a learning curve, and it's so easy to give up if it gets hard, but actually they're the things that help you and help you grow as a person. So it's, getting that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sticking at things for a while as well, and not expect like nothing's going to happen overnight. And if you're looking for something to work overnight, then you're probably not in the right space. You've got to be able and willing to really want to do that work on yourself and figure it out to be able to get the good results. Yeah. I mean, it's just the problem with social media. We see that someone's suddenly got either all of this like wealth or like happiness or whatever it is we are searching for, and it looks like it's happened overnight, and people don't talk about the hard work that happened in between, or the fact that it's not easy every day. Obviously problems get easier, and there's preferable problems, but there's still issues. Nothing is like this fully blissful state that it's not, there's no issues.
Yeah, it can get very overwhelming. It definitely can, social media, and then zap your energy, like you say, and that's a boundary in itself, because it's a highlight reel at the end of the day from people, and you don't see what's going on behind the scenes and the tough day they may have had, or that not everything is perfect. So yeah, it's that's another, like you say, with the boundary thing with your phones and having that downtime and a self-care day so that you can take the time for yourself. They're really helpful tips for people.
Exactly. Even muting people that trigger you or following them, it just, if they aren't making you feel good, it is, you're creating your feed, your life as well. So decide what is making you feel good and get more of that, keep more of that, get rid of the stuff that makes you feel like crap.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. And for those who would like to know a bit more or maybe look at working with you, would you be able to tell us a bit more about where they can find you and how they can do that? Because that would be great.
Yeah, so both my website and my Instagram is Lauren Sam Robbins, Robbins with 1 B.
Oh, that's perfect. It's been so lovely talking to you today, and you've given us so many helpful tips, because it's a minefield starting with boundaries. And I love the fact that you've got to really look at your own identity and confidence and figure out what's right for yourself. And then you can start setting those healthy boundaries and hopefully improve your life.
Absolutely. Little by little, be patient.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, thank you so much, Lauren.
You're very welcome.